And I was saying that there are two primitive command of loops that we talk about when we are talking about in Python. The first loop is while loop, while the second loop is for loop. Basically, this is the two primitive loops that we talk about, and that is I'm going to do whatever we're going to do on this particular section of loops. Now, when with while loop, what it means is that you can execute a set of statements as long as the condition is true. Any set of the statement can be executed as long as if the condition is true. So it is while. This is just majorly why we call it while loop. Now, when you are talking about this, so it means is that if you have, let's say that we have A, B, C, D, E, F, a particular distance. You say while this number is greater than 6, print I. So let me give you an example. Let me just say A, for example, is equal to, let's say, 2, and then we can now start with while. You go ahead with this is, and as much as it is true, A is, let's say, less than 5, for example, print A is less than 5. So what we needed to print is to print A. Now, what does this mean? It means that in as much as the statement is true, keep on making the execution. So in as much as the statement is true, keep on making the execution. So in this case, I'm going to get this done like this, and then you see here that we have while this statement is true, A equals to 1, and then it is invalid syntax here. Yeah. Okay, so this is what I mean by example. Example of this is that while, like I said, is actually used to execute a set of statements as long as that condition is true. Now, if you look here, I say that A is equals to 2, while A is greater than 5. Then print A, and then keep on adding A, like 2, into that particular into that particular value that you have defined. Now, what it means is that as long as this statement is less than 5, any number that you have between the number you start to 5, keep on adding, keep on having this. Let me remove this code first to run this first one to explain what I'm saying. Now, when I run this now, so you see that this thing is going to keep running eternity. Now, this is what you need to understand about while loop. If the while loop statement is not completely done, you can see this thing will run till infinity. So it is going to be infinite loop. You can see it keep on running. You can see this here. So this is a problem now, and that's the reason why I have to define this. So this thing cannot stop running. So the only way I can probably stop is to interrupt execution. But because for the fact that that statement is true, it will keep on running non-stop and nothing will stop it. Now, but when I say anything you get should be less than 5, it should be within 0, like less than 5, and give plus 2. So if I run this statement now, it gives me 2. Here, this means 2 plus 2 is 4. Now, if I change this thing to 15, it means that while this statement is true, give me between 2, add another 2, plus 2, plus 2, plus 2. You can see stop at 14. Now, this is while loop. This is very, very important because most of the things we are going to be doing is going to be revolving around this. So while loop run as long as that condition is true. And you can see here that when I did not put plus 2, it goes in. If I said, okay, in each of them, I want you to add 1. What does it mean? It means that it is going to be 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 in that particular order. But it should be less than 15. But if I say it should be less than and equal to 15, so what it means is that anything have to run and it should be stopping at less than equals to 15. You can see here invalid syntax. Now, what I'm saying is, in generally, if you say it should be greater than 15, that means it is going to run from 15 and above, which you don't want to put because it is not going to work. So that's why I put it less than 15. So if I say it should be less than 10, that means I'm going to have an output that is going to be 2 plus 1 is 3, plus another one 4, plus another one 5, down to 9. So while statement runs as long as that statement is true. Now the while statement require a kind of variables for it to be ready. So you need to define the variables like the way I made this one variable now, and then you need to run it, and then it keep on running until you now say it should stop. Now another example I want to talk about is break. What if I wanted to break on a particular point? If I want it to break at a particular point, why this is while loop, but I need it to break at a particular point. What it means is that I can run a particular statement, but I say break it at somewhere at any point in time. So what it means is that if I say that this thing is less than this, and I say print this, but if I go ahead and after printing and I say if, for example, if the A is equal to, let's say, 8, break at that particular point you have 8. Remember, this thing is making a comparison, so break it at this particular point we have 8 here. So I am going to introduce another this thing here, and then I'm going to say if you get here, break it for me. So what it means is that it will automatically understand that I am talking about it running, and when you get to this particular place, you break it for me. So what happens? I said this one reach 9, because I say here, you can see it here, it get to 9. But here I said when you get to 8, break it for me, stop there. I can also say, since it is less than 5 and it's starting from 2, I can also say break it at 5 for me. So what it means is that when you run, when you get to 5, stop. So this is a way you can integrate while, at the same time break it into like at any point in time you want to break it. Even if this is 100, if you put this thing into 100 and you run it and you say break at 8 for me, it will move and break at 5 for you. If you say since it is 100, break on 15 for me, it will run until you get to 15 and it will break, because that is the command you give it to run and break at that particular point in time. So this is when you're using while loop and you want it to break at any point in time, and this is a simple way you can get it break at any point in time. Also, we have continue. We use continue to do the next iteration. Like if you want the same thing and you want it to continue until then you can also do the same thing. So in this way, instead of using break, you use continue. It's a keyword. This is a continue, so you use it on continue. So what it means is that in this particular part you need it to continue. So you can see here, because we say it is equals to 15, it's going to run to infinite loops, because I say +1 here. So but in this way, to make it not to make it like this, so I'm going to stop it by right clicking on it, and I can say interrupt the execution. Now in while, I'm going to do, let's say that A is equals to 0, for example, and then I want to say that while A is less than, let's make it a small number, a bit, 10, and then we can now bring this thing here, this one that we put here, that we are going to now say here on top of it, we are now going to now make a kind of, this is less than A, so let's make it A plus 1 here. Now that A plus 1, then we now define the if. This is continue, not break at this point in time. We now go ahead and define this one on if, a bit here, because it's supposed to be on the same. Yeah, so if continue, if this thing is equals to 15. Now what do you need to do now? You now go ahead and print out what A means. So in this case, what you're trying to say is that A is equals to 0. When the A is less than 1, then if you get to 15, then you code here. I say 15 here. So let me edit this to, let's say, 3. Now let me run this. Now you see here that you get here when it is equals to 3. So you can see what the output here. You have this 1, 1, 1 here. You have 1, 2, 4. You see what happens up here. If A is equals to 3, continue. So this one is being blanked off. So you can see now that we don't have 3 in this particular list. So this is a way you can integrate this into it, that is break, continue. You can also do something like S, which you can use as a block of code. With S statement, you can run that block of code once that condition is no longer true. Remember what we used to do, that this is true, S go first. So it's also, you can also integrate if and that particular S to it, and that's going to work perfectly for you. So you can work with break, you can integrate it, and then in that particular order. So this is a way you can work with while. Like I said, while is used as long as the statement is true, that particular statement will keep on executing. Now, before you can ask question, in case you have question, I want you to understand what I said here in for. This is very, very important. It is just little, but I just want you to get it in your head and then understand it very well. So on this one, I'm going to talk about people that are present, for example, and then I'm going to put us in the list. So in that list, I'm going to put Ame. Then I'm going to put Lydia. Then I'm also going to put Honore. So let me assume that these are the people that are present now. So how do you use for loop? So once you have the list in any point in time, so the same thing I talked about last time, we have used for loop before, but I just want us to like talk about a bit because I am treating on the topic that have to do with for loops. So this is the reason why I'm just talking about it, so that it's just like a reminder. So you see now that with for loop, I can iterate and get each item inside this particular distance. So for loop does not require indexing variable to set beforehand like the way we were doing before. You don't need to set it. The moment you have a list and you can iterate in each of them, like get distance inside of them, so you can go ahead and get that done. And also remember that in for loop as well, if you mention a particular loop, like if you mention a particular one and you want to get each and everything inside them, you can also use it the same loop. Like if you say for x for each of the item in let's say Ame, then you can still for each of the item in that is in Ame, so you can also still print x, which is items that are inside Ame. So we have talked about this before, so there will be no need of us dwelling more on it. So that means each of the item inside Ame is coming. For example, you can still see it now that when I put it up here and run the same thing, you can see it coming in this particular pattern. So for loop is very, very important, and we use that as well. You can also, the same way, you can also integrate break statement in the for loop as well. It is not just only in while loop that you integrate break statement. So if you have the list of this and you want to print all of them, you print it. But you can also now go ahead and then bring in that if, for example, that x is equal to, and then let's mention a name. Let's put Lydia that is at the center, for example. If we say that it is equals to Ame, like this particular way, like sorry, that the list, and when you get to Lydia, please, I want you to break. Remember, when you are doing this, you need to also put the colon and then you tell it break for me. Now it's a keyword, and when you run it now, so that means when you get to Lydia, break. So everything after Honore is not going to be there. If I go ahead and say Farida here, and then you run this code, it break it off from where you say Lydia. So you can also say break it from Honore, then and you run it, then it's going to stop at Honore. So this is a way you can break at any point in time you want to do break. So, and also we also have continuous statement the same way we have it in while loop. You can also make a continuous statement. It's almost the same pattern. So if it is a continuous statement and you have this, and you, after defining this, so what you need to do is the continuous, just for you loop this thing in this way, bring it up here, and since it is if, so you paste it here, and you are not breaking again, but you are going continue. So you are not printing it. So if you run this, so that means when you get to this is print x, where is tokenization for x equals to fruit, then if so this one I'll press shift and tab, and I will now run it to return back. No, there's interruption, so this supposed to return back. No, let's check. This is fruit for this in this. which is correct. So the problem with here is the indentation. So let's continue here. For this, there is on array inside here. So continue, and then print this. Why is it okay? Continue here. Yeah, so this is here. So what it means is when you get to an array, so you can see here an array is gone. So we have this one. So if you get to here, then this goes in and remaining almost the same thing that we have when we have this, when we're talking about while here. So almost the same thing that you need to actually do. And also on a short one, remember that we also have something like ranges. We talked about it a bit in the beginning, but we use range to return the same series of ranges. So for example, if you say using for as well, and you say that a in the range of 10. Remember, I've said this before. In the range of 10, I've told you that return the range not including this particular one. So print a. So if you run this particular code, so it's going to bring all the ranges that you have given it. That is 10. Give me between 0 to 10, but don't include 10. I've explained this a bit before, and then that is how you can work with range. Also, assuming you have two numbers you want to range with as well, you can also range within two numbers. What I mean by ranging within two numbers is if you want to range between 4 and 10, and that is what you want to range with, you can also range it within that 4 and 10. So you have 4, but remember what I said about it, that the last number you add here is not going to be included. So this is a way you can make ranges within number. And you can also make ranges by incremental. What I mean by ranging by incremental is if you want the ranges to be increased by that incremental, means you want it to be increasing by a particular number, like the way we did here. Up here we say add it plus 1. So if you want an incremental, that means you introduce another number into it. How do you introduce another number? By, if I put 2 here, that means I want you to be making the increment by 2. So I will have 4, 6, and 8. Then remember, it's not going to include it. If I make here by 15, for example, it's going to make the incremental by 2. Assuming I make here by 3 and 5, the factor of this, and I put here by 3, so what it's going to do is that it's going to make the incremental by 3, 6, 12. So that means 3 plus 3, that is 6, 6 plus 3, 9, 9 plus 3, 12, in that particular order. So that's how it is going to get it done. And also remember, like I've talked about, you can also use else statement to also get that done as well. So this is just a way you can work using for loop and while loop. So it's generally a way you can get to execute a particular item that you want in that particular order. So this is okay, this is 34. All right, so this is a way you can work with for loop. Remember what I say by while, and also what I say by while, and what I say by for loop. Now another thing I will talk about quickly, like I said, we don't have much time, is we can talk about function itself. Now I've talked about function when we're doing about global variable, and then I mentioned us that function in Python are a block of code, or a block of code that when you call it, it only run when you call it. If you don't call it, it is not going to run. So in that particular data, you call it by the name of the function you define, and that's going to return it for you. Even your code is big, but it cannot run until you call that particular function. So it helps you to avoid, what function helps us to do generally is to avoid repetition. It helps us to avoid repetition. So in that particular pattern, I can define a block of code for Lydia, define another block of code for Ame, define a block of code for Balaka, and it can only run anytime I call on it. And remember what I said about global and local variable. When we're calling doing global variable, we're using Ame, Farida, and Lydia. I can remember. So those keyword, it doesn't work until you call on them. Now, you remember, like I said, that we use diff, which is the keyword for you to define it. And if I call Lydia as a block of code, now how do I define it? Let's start with the basic aspect of it. This is how I can define Lydia. So anything I put inside here will never run until I mention Lydia. Like I am around. Anything I call will never work until I define Lydia. So I am going to go in here. Then I can also define another one, which I'm going to define Ame, and then I'm also going to leave it like this. Then I'm going to say print I am sleeping. So now you see this code. If I run all of them, you see now nothing happens. So this code is not going to run until I call that block of code. So even though I have two functions that I defined, Lydia and Ame, both of them are inside here, and it's not going to run until I call them. How do I call Ame? If I go ahead and call Ame by saying Ame, then and I run the code, it is only going to call what is in Ame. It is not going to touch Lydia. And if I want to call Lydia, and I'm going to go ahead and say Lydia, and that's only when it can know that I'm calling Lydia. So it is a block of code that run anytime you call it. So you can make a single, assign a single item into it, or you can assign them many times. So whichever way you want, that's in for you. So if you need to call Lydia many times, so that means you need to call Lydia for the first time, and then you go ahead again and call Lydia for the second time. So anytime you want to call Lydia, everything you have to do with Lydia have to come. So you can say I'm around. So this is the only thing, because the block of code you define here, or the function you define here, is Lydia, and there is nothing that is going to work since it is under Ame. Anything under Ame will not work until you call Ame. So in this case, you use function in getting that done. So function follows the same rules as Python. So function must start with a letter or underscore. So you don't have to start with function. The same thing we have in variable. Those rules are followed. So if you want to define a function, you also have to follow those rules. And it must also contain only letters, numbers, and underscore. So you don't need to start it. So for example, in some cases, it is also like in all cases, it's also case sensitive. When you say Lydia is different from when you say Lydia. Like what I'm saying is that I've written, okay, let me use Ame, that her name is not Lydia, look like L. So let me also use Ame here, and I say that Ame here, I'm going to define Ame is, I'm going to say print, and I say I am, let me go ahead with I am sleeping. Also, let me just define this. So because it is Ame, it will not come out even if I run the first Ame. So let me go ahead and call the first Ame here, and I run it. You can see here that what's going to happen here is that it is going to be I'm sleeping. So because it is Ame, it is not going to respond that until I put the small Ame. So what I'm trying to say is that the function is also case sensitive. So this is a way you can work on this. Now you need to also make sure that you use the particular name variable, the valid function name, before it will work. Then why do we need function? So there are several reasons why we need function, and we use that function for several reasons. So you don't need to make a kind of same statement, calculate the same thing many times. No, you don't need to make that happen. I remember when I was I was in India, and then we were doing training on data science, and then I was not really understanding programming well, and then they were asking me, I think it was BMI converter. So, and then they were like, how do I make the conversion? So then I now, based on my little knowledge then, so I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to get it done. But I remember that our instructor uses something like temperature conversion then to actually show me that this is the reason why you need function, because that's going to help you get something done. So once you get that thing done, it will help you get those things duplicated. Like you avoid duplication. Like let me give you like example of what I'm trying to say is that let's say that the way we have meters and kilometers, for example, and let's say that we have let me say that we have 1 kilometer. I wanted to convert it to meters. So 1 kilometer is equals to 1000 meters, for example. Or we can look for something that okay, let's use we might need to use temperature. So let me we can use temperature. So let's say Fahrenheit, Celsius, degree conversion. So let me say temperature conversion. Now this is very, very important because when we will be talking about this conversion, we're going to convert distance of easting to nothing and nothing to distances, and that's what I'm going to talking about. So if you put here, let's start with degree and let's put 32. So 32 degree here. Okay, let me put it here and put this one in Kelvin and then put 32 degree. So you can see here that the 32 degree is giving us this kind of conversion in Kelvin here. So if you put this goes ahead to convert. This thing you see here is just like the same way I said we are going to work on something that looks like this. So the moment you put something, it can make this kind of conversion quickly for you. But let's say that we have temperatures and want to make this conversion. So and you put something and it comes up like this. Now in our case, we can also use like temperature like that. So let me just say temperature here, and then we say that we have a temperature in degree or Celsius or that kind of a thing, and let's say that the temperature in Kelvin or Fahrenheit. Which one do we need to use here? Let's use this Fahrenheit here, because let's use Kelvin and let's use Fahrenheit, for example. Now let's say that we have a degree that's, let's say that we have in Fahrenheit that we have degree like 89, for example, and we say we want to convert it into Celsius, for example, and that Celsius is going to make a conversion by minusing 32. That's the difference between them. Now if we say now that the temperature one, so we're going to put temperature, the temperature here, let's say that the temperature here should be minus by 32 and then multiply by 5/9, for example. Let's just reuse what is here. Now we want to keep on with that particular distance. Now if you run this code now, you will see now that the temperature here is going to be 31.666. Now the temperature of 89 in the online here, so when we are converting from that, so if you say 89 here is 192, so we are converting from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So we say 89 here. Now when we say 89 here, what happens here? We have about 31.668. Now if you go to what we converted on one, you can see it here, 31.666. So there's approximation here that make the other one 8 and this one 7. Now this is the conversion, and this is how the formula works, because you make this conversion. Now let's say now that I ask you to also make another conversion for me, and let me make this one as temp, TMP, shorter, so that I will not be writing something wrong. Or let's just make it TMP1, that is temperature 1 that we want to convert. Now let's say we want to convert temperature 2, for example, and we have another value that I want to convert at 100 degrees Celsius and want to convert it to 100. And let's also say that I want to convert another temperature to temperature 3, and then this is also temperature, this one is temperature 2, and then we want to convert this one to 189. Now if you run this code now, you see now that you are repeating the same processes. You are repeating the same processes because let's put this one Celsius 1, and let's put this one Celsius 2, so that we'll have different results. This one is Celsius 2, sorry, and this one is Celsius 1. Now when we run this code, you see now that we have I have made a mistake. Let me check where I put wrong. Temp 3, this is supposed to be Celsius 3. and then name2 is now defined. Celsius2, let me run it again. And then we have here, no, I'm also still not getting something right. This is temperature 1, this is temperature 2, temperature 3, 100 is 189, okay. Then we are saying temp, this is where the problem is coming from. So I supposed to put this one as temp1. So it is going to be TMP1, and this one is going to be TMP2, and this one is going to be TMP3. Let's run it again. Then we see here that we have different variation of conversion here. Now, if you look here, you see now that if we say convert this to 100, as you can see here, if we change this thing now to 100, what is the conversion in Celsius against Fahrenheit? You see that no, it is Fahrenheit against Celsius. You see 37.777, which is 37.77 here. If we want to convert 189 and we put here 189, for example, we have 89.22 and we also have 89.22 here. Now, you can see that you are repeating the same thing. You go ahead and be saying, because this thing is here, you need to go ahead and keep on repeating the same thing. Now, functions helps you to avoid those repetition, because this is not what you're supposed to keep on writing and then the rest of them. So imagine when you need to make your code look unique and rest of them. So that's you're going to spend enough time getting this done. So for me, what you need to do is you bring in function, and you can say you want to convert from Celsius. No, you want to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, for example. So let's say we can define this function as Fahrenheit to Celsius. This is what I want to convert here, from Fahrenheit to Celsius here. This is the function I'm naming that I want to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. And I want to name this one, let's name this one as Fahrenheit, because this is the main one that we want to convert down to the other one. Now, when you define this function, now what do you need to do? You can say now, for me, return for me the Fahrenheit minus 32/9. So you can see here that I said here, return the Fahrenheit. What did I do? The same thing I'm putting here, because these formula are unique and all of them are the same thing. So I just want to say, return everything that is Fahrenheit, any value that I give you that is in Fahrenheit, minus 32 from it, multiplied by 5/9. Now, what do I need to do? I can go ahead and start making the conversion here, because I already say return that. So I'm going to go here, and then what do I need to do? Here, I will copy this code, and then I'm going to return. What do we convert first? We converted 100. So you can see here, this code has been done here for us completely. So you can see here, if I run this code now, you see now that I get the same answer I get from above. Instead of me going ahead to repeat this, the function, I have defined them once, and that helps me get all those things done once. So without me having to make a kind of conversion in it, and then I don't need to get that done as well. Okay, yeah, so I wanted to check something anyway. So you can see here that the same thing I did here, I just called the function. What is the function? This function here. Anytime I call this function, it answered me. So you can see here, I have how many lines of code. If you leave the space between them, let's return the space, you can see that we have 11 lines of code here to execute this same thing. But here we have, if we return the same line again, you see we have 6. Almost half of this has been saved for us. So this is a way it helps you remove the repetition that you are repeating. So there is no need for you to get that done as well. So anytime you call that particular code, and then that's going to come up again. So this is exactly what you can do as related to that. So these functions helps you remove the repetition. You can use that in anywhere. Like for example, if I want to ask you, what is your name? You say my name is, and I just want to only retain name. Instead of me keep on writing, my name is Lydia, my name is Ame, my name is Balaka, my name is Honore, I can just define a function that say name, and I can input what I want it to put, and I add it up together with it. And anytime I ask you of your name, it comes up by echoing the rest of the value in it without me having to make a lot of input on it. So anytime I call the function, that goes ahead to answer me. So this is a way functions helps you get that done. So the same function, like I talked about pass, you can also use pass on it. But just remember, like I said earlier, that a function is a block of code that only run anytime you call that name. anytime you call it is only when it's going to actually run. If you don't call it, it is not going to run. So this is the way functions work. Now another part of it is when you are defining function, and let's say that I want to define a functions of people that are here. For example, this is exactly what I was trying to explain. We say let's say present again. Remember, we're talking about people that are present. So I want to define the functions of people here that are present, for example. Now what it means is that I am going to say name. Let me just call your names. So I'm going to define a function that I'm going to call the names of these people and name. So anybody I call, I can say print. If I call your name, let's say yes, who is here, and you can say my name is this, I am here. So for example, you see here that I have this name that I put here and I put present. You can see here that because I use function here, I'm using function, and the function I put here is present. So anytime I call your name, it is going to be Ame is coming, Lydia is coming, Honore is coming. What does it mean? I don't need to repeat the same thing again. For the fact that I say present and I put Ame, that is going to come. I can say anything you put here, though a little bit late. For example, if I run this now, it is going to put the same thing for all of us at the same time by putting your name, and I say is coming, though a little bit late. So you don't need to keep on repeating the same thing, because ideally with that function you need to be writing it the way we write this one here, which you have to go ahead and start calling each person's name and get that done. So under this, we are moving this a bit bigger, and what we call this particular thing here, we call like the name here, what we call name here is what we call it parameter. Now the name that I put inside here is called parameter. So you can define many parameters as we go on. You can understand what I'm saying. We are going to be enlarging or expanding this thing bigger than what it is. So we call it parameter. And then inside each of the value you send in there are called the argument. Now what do I mean by argument? The argument we have here is what we call here, Ame is called the argument. So you are bringing in the argument. So Ame now is argument, Lydia is argument, Honore is argument. The parameter in using defining all these arguments you are seeing here, it is called the name, which here is called, this name you find here is called parameter. So let me write it like this, so that if you have this, Ame inside here is called argument, but name inside here is called parameter, like this. So this is the two things you need to note here, because there are certain times where we are going to define a different order this thing. And you know as well that in this particular part you can also add more things. It is not only Ame. Like for example, let's say that this is your name, and then let's say here that we have let's say name. Okay, let's put it name 1, and then I can define another age name. Let me put also name 1. Let me assume that your name is another name, so I can decide to define name. Another main name is called Alliance. Now another Lydia name is called what? Lydia, what is another name? Honore, what is another name? I don't know, but let me put Leon C as other name before I will assassinate your name. Then Honore name is I've forgotten it, but I will. Yeah, whatever. Let me
you can never write it.
Okay, don't worry, I will shock you next time. I will go and learn all your name. I know Ame, I know all the way you guys pronounce it, but I'm going to learn it, and next time I'm going to write it well. Okay, so you look here, you see now that I have two names. I just want to put this is first name and last name, for example. I can bring in this name by using the same particular ways again that I want to do it. So this is you now perform this. So this is now you putting up this. So you have Ame is coming a bit late. But now in here, you can put, you see the way I define name here. I can, if I go in here now and add another name to it, Now, how do I add another name? I can just say between this name, I can make a plus sign. And if I remember, you can just go ahead and add name 1. But remember what I said when we were talking about operator. You see now that this is name and this is another name here, because I say print name and then another name here. So you see that I just make a plus sign here, the first name and last name. So you can see here saying name is coming due to the like a bit, so there is a problem here. So invalid syntax, perhaps you forgot comma. So this is what the problem is here. So if you go ahead and then do a comma like this and run this one, so what happens here, you are going to have this. The problem here is this one here, probably you forget comma. So you can decide to put it in two different ways, by adding a first name and last name, which you can also use an operator like this in order to define whatever you want to put here, and then you can go ahead and run the code, and then that's going to say what's happening. First name, this is parameter 1. Then the second one is this, which is here, then plus this. Says name is coming invalid syntax, perhaps you forget a comma. Did I forget a comma? This is Ame. Let me check the present first before I know what is the problem. This is Ame, comma, alliance is done. Then present again, this one is here. Inputting this one. Okay. This is what it means. I forgot comma here. Invalid. Okay. So now I put up here name, and I can now say Ame alliance is coming, though a little bit late. Now, the moment I keep on this, remember now, what does this mean? I have here two parameters. That is what I mean here. I have two parameters here on this particular part, and this is a way you can go ahead and get this one done here. So there are other things we are likely going to talk about, but I don't really want us to spend much time now. But you can also assign a default value to a parameter. Then, like for example, like if you call that function, like if you call that particular function, it is called without argument, so it uses the default value. If there is nothing in it, then it automatically uses the default value. Yeah, go ahead.
So, sir, can we have like a function whereby we have 2 or 3 parameters, but of different data type? Like one might be a string, another might be an integer. Can that happen?
Yeah, we are going into that, and then when we get done, I think you are going to understand them well. So I can show you what we can do as related to that, the way you can make those ones when you are referring to the like, assuming that for example, when you say that you have age, you remember, and then you needed to make a kind of addition to it, where you have let's say that this particular thing that I'm mentioning Ame now, that Ame age is 54 years old, like Ame is 54, and you needed to have it. So this is a string, this is an integer. This is a string and this is an integer. So you put it up here, Ame is 64. So in that case, you can define it in this particular pattern. And you can say here, like the same way we have it here, and then you can go ahead and say, and her age, and let's just say, and my age is, you now mention name 1. Let me use this example. So though we'll work on it better, so that I will clear you better. But you see these things that I'm saying here, and then if you run it here, then you can see now, ignore what is under, but you can see here that I say something here that Ame is 54, is coming though a little bit late, and her age is, you still repeat the 64 here, which is by passing this into it. So you can get that done on it when it is necessary for you to use it like that. But we are going to actually get this deeper so that you can understand everything you need to understand that's related to it. But this is just a bit of it, because I want us to stick within the time. I don't want me to start sleeping. So, but this is just the way you can get it done. Yeah, and I believe, I think I've answered your question a bit. So you can also assign a particular value to it, a particular value that you want to assign to it. In assigning the value, so let's also start with define, and I'm going to say anything I write here, pass, for example, and I can decide that the name I want to assign to this one is Ame. Now I want to assign a particular value to this. So what it means is that if I go ahead after assigning this value, and then I go ahead and say under header, I'm going to print here, I'm going to print welcome here by printing welcome here name. So you can see here that I am now saying print welcome and the name, which I have defined as a name. So if I go ahead and put PAX here, and then on that function, and mention Ame. No, let me mention Lydia now. Now, what happens here when I run this code? So what happens is that I'm going to say welcome Lydia. Now look at this very well. Welcome Lydia. But you remember I defined Ame here, but I put Lydia here. So if I leave this thing by default and call it Pax only, and then I run this one, I am going to have Ame, welcome Ame. So when it is empty, call the name. When it is empty, call the default value that is defined in the parameter. When it is empty, call the default value that is defined in the parameter. So you can also do that here. It's in the place we have here. You can see name here. So if I say here and say this one is Farida, and then I will go ahead and say that name one here is Leoncy. Now you see that I have defined a name here. So if I run this particular, what do you think that will happen here, for example? So you can see that this is empty. But what if I now decide to say here and say present and run this particular code? What do you think that is going to happen? We are going to have Farida Leonso is coming due to this. So we see these things coming up here. When it is empty, it defaultly pick what is there. But if you assign another thing into it, it sticks with what is assigned to it. This is very, very necessary. And if you want us to continue with the same thing we are talking about, like this learning maths, like bigger than this, you need to understand this particular thing, because the moment we start moving to other aspects, I might not be like mentioning this, but you should also be able to build this knowledge to understand that this is what I am referring to. So this is a way you can get this function done at the same day, just the same way. Like you can make it from in, like I make it anywhere. Like for example, you want to talk about. Let me also define name. Let me just put it like this, and I define this, and I want to say that anybody. Let's say in the case of let's say University of Rwanda. So I want to say that it is University of Rwanda, for example, and then let me say Leonso is coming from University of Rwanda. So let me just say Leonso is coming from University of Rwanda, for example. And how do I construct this? Okay, let me use it like this. Leonso is from University of Rwanda. So if I run this particular code, it's going to be welcome Ame. But when I leave it by default here, it's going to bring on this particular University of Rwanda. So if I go here and then say that I want to welcome people from IPRC, Now, if I run this code, it will be like welcome IPRC. But if this case happens, like if there is nothing inside here, call return back to University of Rwanda. So if I mention people from IPRC and any other person that is not there, group them into University of Rwanda. So this is a way you can get that done. You can put it in other different way and get it done. And like what I showed you here, it is also necessary for you to know that here you can input parameter. You can see the way I put the parameter here in the beginning. You can put the parameter anywhere you want to put it. Then another thing I want to talk about is how do you send, how you can send an argument with a key, about like with the key value strings. How do you send them? Like let me explain. It's better explaining with what I'm saying here. Let's say that I still have this. Let me define using this first one. Let me just copy this a bit to be easy for me to edit. So let me copy this down here, and I'm going to paste this here. Then I want to make a modification. Remember, I'm going to remove Farida here. I just want to, you see the way I assign value here, that means I assign this into it, but I want now to make a name like in the other way around, and I want to say my name is this, but now I want to assign this thing into it. Now what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to say name. For example, I'm going to say name here, and I'm going to assign Ame to it. Then in that way, I'm going to also say name1 here, for example, and I'm going to assign Lydia into it. Then I'm going to remove this. Now you see now that in the other one, for example, in this one I assigned it this way, so you can see now that I'm saying name1 Ame Lydia is coming. You can see here Ame Lydia is coming, though it is going to come a bit late. Now remember this one that is here. Now in this case, I am assigning the first one. I have, let me clean up this, because even with this me, let me say name1. This is name, which is going to be name I am coming. Now this is the first one I put up here, name I am coming. Then let me also say name1 I am coming. But you see here that what I'm trying to say here, that you see the way I said here, I can also like go ahead and call the name1 here, which is now Lydia. So comma name1, let's use name again, which is Ame. Now what it means is that I am assigning it. You can see Lydia here. You can see here I'm going this way. Lydia, I am coming, Ame. So this one I was putting it here. This one, the first one we did here, where's my mouse? The one we put here, I am putting it here. But this one, I'm putting it here. So this is just like a tricky things that is inside there. You don't need to get it in your head. The more you keep on working on it, you can. The more you keep on working on this, you can always get it done. So you can also use positional argument. That's positional argument should have a correct order. That's when you want to put in something and then you put it in order, and that's going to work in for you. So I think I don't want us to keep us long, though I put it 1 hour 30 minutes, but I know you are going to I don't want us to spend much time, so maybe we will retrieve on this a bit. We'll start from here a bit, so where we will talk about the positional argument a bit.